Rathalos has long been disrespected by Capcom in the newer installments of Monster Hunter. Used as a tool to establish the threat of newer creatures like Astalos and Malzeno. This came to a head in Iceborne, where Rathalos is framed as an equal to a Nagakuga, a monster that is nowhere near as powerful as the first two mentioned, and significantly weaker than the first flagship monster. I think it's fair to say that Capcom has long mistreated the King of the Skies in order to make their newer monsters look cool. So as I progressed through Wilds and saw just how many monsters were original designs, I waited with bated breath to see which of them would trounce the Fire Wyvern. As the main plot unfolded, it became clear that Arkveld was the apex of this world, easily slaughtering both Rey Dau and Uthduna, so I expected him to kill Rathalos when he finally appeared. When the artificial Rathalos mission began, it was almost a certainty in my mind that the real one would appear later, with Alma giving a comment about how much stronger this one is before Arkveld swiftly slayed it. But to my shock, Prime Rathalos doesn't even appear in the main story, which I'm sure has got to be a franchise first. Instead, he's saved purely for endgame hunts, and doesn't have a cutscene or cinematic associated with it. Now, a reasonable person might assume this is Capcom sidelining Rathalos, saying that the former star isn't even worth mentioning, but on the contrary, Capcom gave more love to Rathalos in this game than the one when he was on the cover. For the first time in the history of the series, Rathalos has been given his own dedicated battle theme, a reward only reserved for the flagship monsters and final bosses. It seems insane that it took 2 decades for the mascot of the franchise to get his own theme song, especially when he was on the cover of Monster Hunter World, but this theme is more than enough to make up for that oversight, especially in a game that doesn't focus on him in the main narrative. What's more, he's shown to be far more capable in the Turf Wars, absolutely bodying Rompopolo and Quimatris as expected, but when he's put face to face with Uthduna, a new monster that Capcom should be hyping up, he actually holds his own against the Apex. It's not a clean sweep, as he does get RKO'd when he goes in for a strike, but hey, at least he's finally using his Venom Claws in a turf war. What's more is his weapon tree is at the bottom of the chart, which is normally reserved for the strongest monsters in each game. Sure, he's still playing second fiddle to Gore Magala, but at least that's a classic monster and historically a much stronger opponent than Rathalos, and not the new shiny thing Capcom has a vested interest in making cool. In fact, there's another monster that takes Rathalos' place as the strong monster that makes the flagship look cool, Rey Dau. I don't think it's a coincidence that Rey Dau was in the first beta, being the first challenging experience most players had with Wilds' refined gameplay, made the fight unforgettable to all the new players. And the hype from that battle is what carried Wilds all the way to its monumental launch numbers of 8 million copies in 3 days. To put that in perspective, that's as many copies as Nier Automata has sold in total. I can personally attest that Rey Dau was my most hyped fight going into Wilds, and I was surprised at how the narrative treated him. He was thrashed by Arkveld, just absolutely humiliated in every conceivable way, twice. The fully charged railgun like Thundershot that will one-shot you without fail gets absorbed by Arkveld and reduced to nothing, before the flagship grabs him, smashes him into the ground, and crushes his skull with his chains. In all of Rathalos' humiliations across the last 3 games, Capcom has never gone as far to have his opponent play with his corpse after he was one-shotted. Where I and many players expected Rey Dau to take on the role of the Rathalos-like Apex for Wilds, he's actually weaker than Rathalos in terms of stats. With much lower HP than Rathalos, Rey Dau is actually the weaker of the two, with the King of the Skies being framed as high above this new dragon. This represents a complete reversal in how Rathalos has been treated in this franchise as of late, from being mitigated to hyping up new cool monsters, to having those cool new monsters get thrashed. This re-evaluation is sorely necessary in Wilds due to it having more newer monsters than any modern installment in the franchise, meaning that the classics they do bring back can't be shown to be obviously lesser than the new beasts, or else Capcom risks insulting their legacy. What's more is that with the eventual expansion, you can be sure we'll see Silver and Gold Rathalos returning, making the fight against him even grander with his new theme soaring in the background. Rathalos is probably never going to take the top spot on the food chain ever again as Capcom introduces newer and more epic monsters, but it's nice to see that the most iconic beast in the franchise gets the much needed update and respect he deserves after playing second fiddle to Nagakuga of all things. For more Monster Hunter essays, here's one about why the longsword is so dominant amongst the player base, and I'll be back in 2 days.